Hey everybody, I think we're ready to go. Well, welcome to what I think is a great panel of content creators and people that have had significant experience in the traditional media space and then the new and up-and-coming OTT distribution of content that used to be digital but now is kind of linear/digital. So we are in a really interesting time right now. So I'm delighted to have a great group of panelists. Before I introduce themselves, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey Thompson. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up at the Walt Disney Company in strategy and alliances. I worked on some acquisitions, integration team for ABC Family. And then at some point, so I was on the business side of entertainment, and then at some point, I started dabbling on the creative side and working on some of the platforms. So I launched Blu-ray Disc with Walt Disney Motion Picture Group, which was pretty, that's how I got to digital, by doing the last physical format. And then I've had 4 producer credits, 2 documentaries, one show called Schooled on ABC Family, which was my first kind of cool little teenage kid breakout show that was a back-to-school special, which was about how do you create content, how do you sell it, how do you monetize it, how do you create partnerships, how do you distribute it, how do you make money on it. And I think all of that spirit is why we're here today, because that was back in 2006 and 7, and the whole marketplace has shifted in the last 10 years. So I think these guys are the experts, and we're going to dig deep in their backgrounds. So before I get any further, I wanted to ask a question of the audience. How many of you are actually content creators? Fantastic. How many of you are on the distribution side? How many of you are attorneys and analytics and everything? Yep, there you go. So, all right. So we have a good group, and we'll get going here. So why don't I start with this panel, and I'm going to start here with Colin and have you introduce yourself. And I'm going to, like I've told them, I'm giving them curveballs today to keep it. We're the first panel. We're doing Curveball City. This is Colin. I want you to introduce yourself, tell us about your company, and tell us about what gap you guys are filling in the marketplace right now.
Oh gosh, okay. I'm Colin Whelan. I own a production company called Conveyor Media. I will lean forward.
You are being, all of you guys are being webcast around the world right now, so in the mic.
Okay. Well, nice. Hey everybody, I never fail to disappoint, so it's a pleasure. We do a lot of linear and digital content, but just I guess here to speak primarily about digital. So the biggest show we've got, I guess right now, is called Cooking on High on Netflix, and that's a competitive cooking show. The first one with weed. And I guess the gap that we fill in the marketplace, as we just notice we've got to go up against really big production companies at all times. So we just sort of, I guess, pride ourselves on being really fast, really nimble, and we never say no. And that is just sort of, that kind of the advantage we have. We just try to get it done. So.
Okay, this is Dan Diefenbach. I only wanted to pronounce his name to show that I've studied up on him. So Dan, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Dan Diefenbach. I'm Chief Content Officer at Rebel Labs, which is a new company. It's a digital health and media startup, and I am in the enviable or unenviable position to build my entire production company from scratch and build a content library across about 5 different categories. We are trying to bring together a 360-degree content library on cooking, nutrition, health and fitness, strength training, yoga. In fact, I just hustled from our yoga set about 10 minutes ago. They're doing a heck of a job. Namaste. In all seriousness, before we shot, one of the yogis got up and actually did a stretching routine and like a breathing routine. I have never felt, I don't know if you guys do yoga. This is totally non sequitur. Sorry, man. It was incredible. Before our shoots, I think we're going to start doing it. You should look into that. It's awesome. It's really cool. But I'm glad to be here.
My name is Daniel Tibbetts. I have a long history of digital and linear production and content creation, television for a few years, and then one day I told my boss I was going to make television for cell phones. This was in 2004, 2005. We went on to make GoTV networks for about 6 years. It was very early mobile content. And then prior to what I do now, I was the Chief Content Officer of Machinima. However, for the last 2.5 years, I've been the President and General Manager of El Rey Network. It's a media brand that director Robert Rodriguez created 5 years ago. And specifically, it's an escapist entertainment network that is general entertainment, but it's really about through a Latino lens, looking at second, third, fourth, fifth English-speaking Latinos, U.S. Hispanics in America, and making sure that they have a platform to be represented positively in front of the camera and behind the camera, which I think is interesting because I know there's been a lot of protesting and political outcries to a company like Paramount, who has failed to really show diversity in their programming. El Rey was built on the idea that diversity and representing diversity in media is absolutely priority number one.
That's great. Go ahead.
So my name is Nick Nelson. I'm the head of product at OwnZone's Entertainment Technologies. My background, I started more kind of in Silicon Valley at like Plantronics and a few other tech companies up north. Moved down to Hollywood and found myself still doing technology, but with entertainment. Spent some time at Netflix as well as CISO over at NBC. And most recently, OwnZones, which is really focused on kind of getting content to consumers, but with technology, right? So a digital supply chain system as well as a front-end consumer app ecosystem. So we find people like El Rey, Magnolia. Well, we're not partnered with El Rey, but Magnolia, MGM, and other studios to create platforms to get their content out for monetization, as well as just in front of consumers.
And Steve.
Yes, hi, I'm Steve Sloan. I'm an experienced content creator and producer. I've sold various formats to country music television, Crackle. I've had some shows optioned to Fox as well. And recently, about 8 months ago, I created Crypto Cake, which is the first solely dedicated 24-hour, 7 days a week blockchain and cryptocurrency news and entertainment channel. We're looking to launch hopefully in February or March of 2019. We have over 14 original shows, and again, everything from news to scripted to various different formats that we'll discuss with you guys.
This is great, and I hope you understand why I think this is going to be a great panel. So we come to you today with tremendous change in the marketplace. Now, it doesn't seem like change because we walked into Sleepy Digital Hollywood at the first panel of the day, but this is the first Digital Hollywood where Disney is now closing on Fox, two preeminent brands in the media business. This is the first Digital Hollywood where Warner Brothers is no longer Warner Brothers on its own, but it's Warner Media owned by AT&T. Huge shifts in the marketplace. This is the first Digital Hollywood with new TV from the ex-DreamWorks executive, Katzenberg, is now just raised $1 billion to create short-form content for digital. So we are going through an interesting phase, and I would also argue that a lot of the people, matter of fact, everybody up here is in a space that did not exist the way it exists now, opportunity. I'm looking at you, Daniel, because you're in a sort of a traditional cable network, but you're targeting a niche that's fast growing and that has urban content.
Yeah, and those who have heard me speak or know me, I always talk about a mass niche, right? And it's been kind of my programming philosophy for 15 years, which is find a group of people that are extremely passionate about something, and then there's a lot of them. And when you think about the U.S. Hispanic marketplace, specifically English speaking, there's not a lot of content that is targeted to that group of individuals. But as a basic cable network, you still have to be, total market, right? You have to appeal to everyone. But again, it's that lens in which you create content through. So I think we're really uniquely positioned because there really isn't a lot of cable networks, really, outside of Fuse, which has made a shift of music to then becoming Latino. El Rey, again, founded by Robert, had that idea from day one. And so it's been a part of our philosophy, our mission, our programming strategies with everything we do. The one thing I would say is, because you just brought up the shift of media. So that's an important aspect of when you think about that consolidation. A basic cable network like ourselves, most of our content is acquired content. And so what's going to happen as Disney and Warner Brothers and CBS have their own OTT products and their own SVOD products, they're going to hold on to a lot of their library content. So for a company like ours, the negative of that is I'm not going to get access to that acquired content. The positive of that is I have to create a lot more original content, which will then satisfy our brand mission. Now, The other part of that is then we have to think about our cost structure. And I'm not going to jump that far here, but I did want to address that. You brought that up and the impact it has in the basic cable universe.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to go back over here to Colin, because Colin is in an interesting place where you're about 50-50 linear and digital content.
Yeah.
Tell us how you started, and tell us, like, what threats are out there to your business as you grow. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I view the biggest threats nowadays, it isn't always like the rival big production companies, because to me, it's really the 17-year-old girl in her mom's basement putting on eyeliner and uploading the videos, you know what I mean? Because she gets just as many views as our biggest hit shows. So that to me is like, the not so obvious, but the problematic threat that like we as a smaller production company face. And then, yeah, our business started in '04. I was a freelance showrunner, and then I became a network executive, and just honestly wanted to get back to producing, but wanted to start a company. So we sold the first series to Discovery, and then look, my former business partner's friend was pretty high up at Awesomeness, and that started all this digital work. And we just kind of, like I said earlier, we just never said no. So this executive asked, could you guys do programming geared towards millennial mothers? And my single gay ass said, yes, I can. I have never held a baby, but I'll figure it out. So we just became like a huge supplier and did, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 series for them. And it just sort of kept going from there. And then we just sort of like kind of believed in some of our own ideas, even when our agents were like, you guys are just trash. And we got a show sold to Netflix, that Cooking on High show, because everyone was embarrassed about, a cooking competitive show that had marijuana. And we were like, well, it's kind of funny. We ought to do it. So I don't know. So I've just been plugging along from there. Yes, I am like always the classy guy on the panel.
And now that show. And now that marijuana show's on Netflix, is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So there's opportunity where you can find the niches. Daniel,
right. Trash pays.
Dan, you guys are doing some of the same thing where you're creating, I won't call it niche content, but you're creating genre content and really going deep with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about the business model and where you're going with it.
Yeah, so we all know that cooking is one of our spaces, right? So we all know that these spaces are very crowded. You have fitness content everywhere you turn. You have cooking content everywhere you turn. Everybody's trying to tell you what kind of fad diet to get onto via content, via YouTube. In their basement, like you said, people are cooking and telling you what to eat. So our founder, actually, Charles Haston, was on a weight loss journey. It's really interesting, and he was desperately searching for a company that could aggregate or actually provide him with some authentic, trustworthy content that he could actually lose the weight and get healthy. Well, he got on that treadmill that we all know about. There's fad diets and there's fad workouts. So steeped in sort of that truth, if you will, we've tried to build a 360-degree content engine, which will be subscription-based. We actually are internally lovingly referring to us as the Netflix of health and fitness. And that's really what we're trying to do. And I think Daniel touched on it too. We're always producing. Like, if I can say anything to you guys, especially the content creators and even the distributors, always be creating. Remember Glenn Ross, always be closing. That's right. Always be creating. So we're constantly up against that too. And what happens is, from a cost structure, it becomes a challenge to become efficient when you're trying to create content and trying to get it to market. What we've done is we've built exactly this production model, but we've done it on the digital side. So I come from linear TV, I come from Fox, I come from the NFL Network. I've been not smarter, but we're trying to take that model and bring it internal for a digital model, meaning own your own equipment. Work with the same teams over and over, build some sort of a year-to-year cost structure that you can work with those teams in a very efficient manner, and we shoot in our office. I think I was just telling him that that's where our set is. And so I think there's some cost benefit that goes along with always be creating. And I think as long as you're taking a look at the bottom line, but you're also creating the content for your consumer. Ours is millennial males. Right now, that's what we're taking a swing at. It's a tough nut to crack. So.
And by the way, not just for digital, all platforms need to find cost reductions
Yeah.
and volume of content. They have to. So while we're watching Netflix just pay more and more and more and more, I get it. But if you look at cable networks, and I would even argue some of the broadcast networks, because of the volume issue, they have to, and the dollars aren't going up, right? These companies aren't becoming more profitable, so they have to figure out how to produce more effectively.
Yeah.
They have to.
We do.
Hey, Steve, I'm going to jump to you for a minute. Don't go to sleep on us over there, because let's go back to crypto cake, right? So now we have, and when we were, cryptocurrency is like one of the hottest things going, right? It's been up and down, but one of the challenges is that you just don't know enough about cryptocurrency. So they've jumped into this niche. And we were talking before the panel about the fact that there's another company that we know that's owned by Disney now, ESPN, that jumped into a niche. That niche was college programming with ESPN. They weren't doing a bunch of colleges. They were doing just University of Connecticut, right? Just Connecticut sports. And then they started building out from there. So let's not, like, cryptocurrency could be something. So talk a little bit more about what CryptoCake's doing, what kind of programming you're doing to target this audience.
Well, what's so nice about having being in this space now is that anyone could literally create their own channel and own their own content, and cryptocurrency blockchain is this sort of bizarre subculture, but it obviously gets a lot of attention in the media. And there's about 20 to 40 million people on a daily basis who trade cryptocurrency. And I've been following the space for probably the last 10 years since it started, and I sort of melded my background in production and created this channel, CryptoCake. We are going to be first to market, which is a little daunting, but at the same time, I really believe there are going to be 4 of these type of news channels, just like the CNBC, Bloomberg Television, Fox Business News, that solely focuses on stock. There's going to be 3 channels devoted to cryptocurrency and blockchain. And as sort of the main dish, we have our news show, which runs 3 hours a day, which is 24-hour, 7 days a week live news, capturing the latest and breaking news in that world. But sort of the side dishes is we have other formats, anything from scripted to a poker show where folks play poker with volatile cryptocurrency, to gaming in crypto, to women in crypto, to ICO reviews. For all you folks that don't know what ICOs are, those are initial coin offerings. We have everything that sort of covers the space, and we're hoping that of the 20 to 40 million that trade crypto, will get about 1 to 2 million to watch. And of course, all those folks that know nothing about the world, we're hoping that they would tune in as well.
Just quickly, where are you looking for distribution? When you look at how you...
Well, we're 100% streaming right off the bat. So we're already reserved on Amazon Fire, Roku. We're on Twitch. We're going to be on Chromecast, and of course, every mobile phone applications. Of course, we'll probably get the majority of the folks just going to our website. But eventually, we'd like to, shift over to, Spectrums or DirecTV and be under their carriage agreements. Although it might not matter, by the time we get there, because everyone's cord cutting anyway. So,
We'll talk about that. Hey, Nick. So talk about own zones. Like you have some really interesting things going. Give us a deep flavor and what gap you're filling in the marketplace.
Sure, yeah. I guess with my background, so probably my best experience was working at Netflix for about 5-6 years. And when I joined the company, I always kind of tell the story. There's about 1,800 people in Los Gatos and about 100, maybe less, in Hollywood. And so, it was a tech company, right? They really didn't know much about content other than the small team that was aggregating it. And that's what gave them such a huge advantage, right? To be able to create a platform to reach their consumers, to get data, to go global, to do all these amazing things that they've done to disrupt the market. And, you see the likes of Amazons and others kind of getting in. And so what OwnZones does, in my mind, is we're that 1,800 people to your 100. Like, we are building building the technology that helps you distribute, right? Whether it be to Netflix or to Comcast or to whomever. And then we also build the apps that allow you to connect to your customers. And it's surprisingly complicated to do those two things, and it requires a lot of technology to be able to actually create a discovery experience to make sure that it plays when someone hits play. To get a piece of content in the format that this person wants with this metadata and all these things, right? Very complicated, and honestly something that I see kind of detracts from creative visionaries, right? I think we are oftentimes really complementary because we help creatives focus on being creative, and we focus on the technology that helps them monetize it.
That's great. That's great. So I'm going to stop for a second and ask you guys to use your wisdom hat. These guys are out. Like some are newbies. Some have been in the business a long time. Let's help them make some money. I need a prediction in the marketplace. They don't know this is happening, by the way. So I need a company that's not your own that's doing really great things in the marketplace that these guys need to be aware of that could be a moneymaker for them. And before I get you to, I'm going to start with you, Colin. Remember, whether Snapchat's doing well or not, 2 years ago they went public and a lot of people became billionaires. I think there was 2 or 3 billionaires off the top. My point is there's some companies right now that are on the move. Give us one that is in the space.
Well, it's so fun. I don't know these folks, but I think the production company B17 is interesting because they created the Snapchat series Phone Swap, and that went to Fox as a syndicated dating show that was tested this summer. So I don't know. Like there's these little shows can turn into big shows faster than you think.
Phone Swap, a new type of show?
Well, it's a dating show that before people agree to go on the date, they'll trade phones, and you can imagine what you find. And so, yeah.
So B17.
B17 is the production company, yeah.
Okay, Dan, can you do better than
I'm
this?
not one of those billionaires, by the way. I wish.
I'm going to steal
Give
the
us
answer
one.
before anybody else says. I mean, Disney. I mean, here's the thing. They're taking their ball and they're going home. Really smart move. It's gonna be incredible. It's gonna be tough to compete with when you're not getting syndicated programming from them years later and beg, borrow, and steal any of the Disney properties. I really think also that we can't turn a blind eye to VR yet. I know that sounds weird. Had a guy in my office yesterday who owns a bunch of VR equipment, and we're gonna try some really interesting content revolving the health and fitness space. So there's a couple good companies out there when it comes to VR, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna stack my cryptocurrency on Disney.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel, you've been around this space for a while. Give us somebody we need to be on the lookout for.
So I've been a real big fan of Verve recently. So Verve is an Otter Media company. AT&T just bought 100% of Otter Media, right? So basically they bought Otter Media for $1 billion, right, in 2 different tranches. And Verve is their SVOD play. Now, we've seen a lot of SVODs come and go very quickly over the last 3 years. What I think is interesting about Verve is they have a channel strategy. So unlike Netflix, which is just a pure play content vertical strategy going after individual demographics and show creation, they're creating individual channels that you could subscribe to a la carte, or you can pay $9.99 and get the entire Verve ecosystem. They're most famous for Crunchyroll, and I think this is pretty sure it's public, but they've got over 1 million to probably 1.5 million subscribers, right? And so that's a really interesting ecosystem that I think if you're going to go OTT SVOD play, they have the best opportunity to compete with a Netflix and win.
So we got Verve, Disney, VR, and B17. All right, Nick, you're up. Give us a good one.
You just took it. So I think I'm going to switch just to Amazon, to be honest. I know obviously everyone knows about them, but from a services-based standpoint, the majority of what they do and what they serve, they've really turned their technology to supporting niche genres and indie producers and really getting content out there. Obviously, I'm looking at it from the tech side again, but what they've been doing and where they've been progressing their technology, like Media Live, which allows for really cool live streaming, cost effective, at scale, geographically distributed. I think it's enabling kind of geographic penetration and distribution that previously was inaccessible or required, very complicated ways of getting content out there. So I think they affect everyone's lives in this room, regardless of whether you know it, but really interesting what they're doing on their services, especially around AI.
It's good. Steve, you're up.
You guys took them all. No, I'm just kidding. No, there's actually one company that you guys should be on the lookout, and gals, is Cheddar. And Cheddar is kind of going to be our competitor, I believe. So, damn, I respect them. But anyway, yeah, basically Cheddar is the business news channel that started out 100% on OTT. That's solely focused and geared towards millennials. So, if you can picture CNBC with, a bunch of millennials giving the business news. Of course, my focus for CryptoCake is solely on blockchain and cryptocurrency, so we're kind of, hand in hand there. They recently got a deal with Sling TV, so they're now part of the Sling TV package, and they're growing really rapidly. I'm a Gen Xer, but for every one Gen Xer, there are 3 millennials, so they rule. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it.
So with all this going on, okay, so
that is the most impressive company as far as distribution.
Yes,
and
yeah.
what they've managed to accomplish.
They made it happen.
Absolutely amazing.
So wait, so we have 2 Cheddars now. 2 Cheddars? Is that what we got?
Cheddar,
Okay.
Cheddar cake. Let's go with cake.
All right.
And I'll change my vote too.
That's all changed.
I was going to say Al Jazeera, but okay.
Well, I think it's so important because when Colin and I were talking yesterday, I think we were having this conversation about one of his first gigs. I want to say in the digital space was Awesomeness TV.
Right.
And let's be clear about this. Awesomeness TV started by Brian. What's his name? Brian Roberts. Yes.
Robbins.
No. Robbins. Yes, absolutely. Producer goes in, gets a YouTube channel for $5 million. They funded it. He starts creating content. He's doing it on the side as his passion play. Then, he creates a couple of really good, nice little shows on this little digital channel. YouTube platform for free, basically, advertising supported. Then it gets bought by DreamWorks. Then DreamWorks sells a portion to either Warner Brothers or AOL. I'm forgetting which one. And now they're part of NBC Universal. And this is all within 2012. That's 6 years. So you get the right trend, you can grow real fast, not just investment, but content-wise, because he's been producing content for them for years now.
There's an interesting conclusion to that, though.
Yes.
So 5 million to 130 million valuation, right? To 650 million valuation with Viacom, down to selling for 25 million completely to Viacom.
There you go.
So in that same period of time, we watched as digital media's valuation just went crazy and then has now plummeted. So for all of these digital media channels, you have to be thinking about what caused that, which was Q4 of last year, with the ad market declining, but then also how your valuation strategy is going to go forward now, because it's a different game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sell high.
If somebody says 650, take it.
Take
Just
it.
take it.
Retire.
Say yes.
All right, so what are the gaps holding this market back? Like you mentioned one earlier with costs. Like 2 of you guys, Daniel and both Dans, you mentioned costs, like cost of content, business model for content. Like what are things that are holding us back with this transformation?
Yeah,
And you got to speak into the mic.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and we talked about millennials, right? Cryptocurrency, he knows his market. There's 40 to 50 million people, 20 to 40 million people doing the exact thing, right? And hopefully same with us at Rebel Labs. Like, we know it's millennial males that work out, that don't have a lot of time, that don't know they want to be told what to do, but we're going to tell them what to do because it's going to help them in their life. They have some discretionary funds. I can keep going on our market, but I think it's know your market. I think if you know who you're speaking to, I think it's a very, very good path to go down. And as long as you have that North Star, I think it's important, every piece of creative, every time you write, every time you produce, every time you think about a partner, you have that North Star, which is your marketplace. And as long as you stick with that, I think that's a pretty good recipe for success. So especially now with all of these different segmented populations, and people are getting older, they're getting younger, Facebook's for old people, and Instagram, and there's all of these pieces of content being created. If you know who you're speaking to, speak to them in their language, do it very well, and do it over and over.
I need more problems. Like, what's holding this industry back?
Well, maybe baby boomers, I'm thinking, because, the big question is, are baby boomers going to be technophobes, or are they more sort of accepting the fact that streaming exists? And, are they going to, 5 years from now, are they going to be like the most high-tech grandparents we've ever known, or are they just going to just think it's not real and just stick to linear? So I think baby boomers are really going to decide whether the space in OTT space accelerates or not.
Nick, tell us from your technology perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's how do you reach your customer, and how do you acquire customers, and how do you retain them? I mean, there's just billions being poured into the marketplace. There's so much to watch. There's so many places to watch it. There's teenage girls putting on eyeliner. I mean, there's a lot more competition by the day. And so, I mean, I think it's really important, to your point, to be true to your brand, to be true to your consumer, to know who your audience is. But even when you do that effectively, you still might not be able to reach them. And that's a really big problem.
Yeah, and it funnels into awareness, right? And so awareness is, I think, the biggest problem we have. And one of the solutions that, a lot of people were working on 10 years ago and now are back again is recommendation engines. Right? How am I recommending content? Netflix does it, I think, well. I think Amazon does it poorly. Sorry, I know we're being broadcast live, but I know you guys will do better. But that's the key, is when you create that much content, or when that content's available, then how are you telling me what I should watch and being right, so that I then engage with your content? It's a huge challenge. It has not been solved.
All right, I'm going to open it up to questions in just a moment, so get ready. But I want to dig into this a little bit more. So think about all these new things. You mentioned recommendation engines. I hear about artificial intelligence, analytics, or really predictive analytics are really coming on board to help with content creation and where you distribute content. Are these tools, is this all smoke, or is any of this magic? And who's doing it well, if anyone's using these tools well? Because I'm thinking, like, you have a niche. Everyone here has got a niche. How are you using these tools to have a differentiated advantage? Because that's what, if you got bought, someone would be buying.
Specifically around just algorithmic suggestion and AI and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's only as valuable as like the data that you have to put into it, and especially in the early stages of where it's at. And in my experience, so I worked at Netflix as well as CISO, very different, right? Very focused, very everything. And it works well with Netflix because they have 120 million people, trillions of data points. It actually can create value. With CISO, I think we found that someone that just knew the comedy space really well could program for consumers way more effectively than AI could.
Say what CISO is to the group.
It was a comedy streaming service that NBC lit up for a little while to do original programming. And so they had a bunch of NBC content as well as a bunch of original content.
That's great. All right. Anything else on this? I've beaten them up enough. Let's go to questions, and you were very eager. Go ahead.
I have a question for Dan and Elray. Dan, you mentioned cost structure is really important for you with creation of new content. What is the ideal? What is the ideal soft number or range for new content that you'd be creating in-house?
So as a network president, my answer, even internally, is always as low as we can go. and our production, our creative, our business affairs people hate when I say that. But it's true, right? And so as an example, when I joined in 2016, my goal for 2017 was to double the amount of content at half the cost per hour, and we accomplished that. And I continue to do that. I continue to deliver more hours of content for less per hour. And so if I can get something for $100,000 an hour, or $10,000 an hour, or $150,000 an hour, depending on what it is, that's what I'm going to go for. And because I have a production background and production finance background, I'll look at the budget. I'll know how to produce things. I will bring my digital expertise, right? When I was at Machinima, we created 600 hours of content in 2015, and we did it at a healthy margin. And we did it, a lot of with what was being said here. It's about creating an infrastructure and a team that you can really maximize the amount of hours you put out. But as you know, it's also contingent on the creative and what the genre is. If you're not doing scripted, a scripted, a Netflix scripted hour for $100,000 an hour, right? But there's a lot you can do that still fits your brand, that is unique for your audience, that you can, right? For anything from, again, 10,000 to 100,000 to 200,000.
That's good. Yes, go right ahead.
The larger traditional movie and production companies have basically backlogs of content where they bought it and then they chose not to put it out because it would be too expensive for theaters or whatever. Is there a possibility that that will be, that some of that backlog might become competition for streaming and some of your grassroots?
I think without a doubt. I mean, that's why I'm betting my cryptocurrency on Disney. Libraries of content. That's what we're striving for right now. I mean, everybody up here, you strive to create a very, important library of content, not just content for content's sake, but again, back to finding your market. If you create that library of content, then you have audience engagement for a lot longer. And I think it's definitely going to come into play.
Yeah, ownership is key. Expanded rights is key. A lot of times, like in a cable network business, especially we're in the U.S., you would only buy rights for your territory, right, for basic linear cable. I don't do that anymore. I want global, worldwide, in perpetuity, SVOD, AVOD, every type of right I can get, and I'm willing to pay, right, for those rights under the right economics. But if you can build a library, then you can run it as many times as you want, as many platforms as you want in perpetuity. That's the best business to be in.
But aren't there opportunities like we're going through Disney and your model where you're buying as much content? I see more independent producers making more money than I've seen, I think, in my lifetime. And I don't know why that is. Tell me why that is. I understand some of it is that they get to keep some of their own rights, and some of it is the cost of content's gone down. But tell us why.
Someone once told me 10 years ago in the business, the more ownership you have, the more money you make. It's pretty simple.
The barrier to entry is a lot lower. I remember when I was an assistant, I would handle all my boss's equipment, and I remember paying $1 million US for the first Avid system, and now, I don't know, I got like 15 of them, and they don't cost anything. So, like we own all of our own stuff, and
cost of equipment, also access to people. I mean, the creatives know now, and the smart ones know that an idea or a show or a premise or a pitch can come from anyone. Can come from the basement, can come from your neighbor, and I think accessibility to executives that will pay, which is why there's more and more producers, and producers are, you can't describe a producer. It's anyone. It's your mom. It's it's you. It's me. So it's interesting. I think accessibility to people that are actually buying or actually investing in content is a lot easier now.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less expensive, and I think as time goes by, more and more people will be able to create content and channels in a less expensive way. But on the flip side, it may become saturated. Everyone's going to have their own TV show. Everyone's going to have their own platform. So it should be interesting how it shakes out.
Yeah, it still comes down to execution, though. It's having an idea is not enough. And that's I don't need any more ideas. I need people that can execute at a high quality for the dollar, period, the end. We actually don't take a lot of pitches because it's a shotgun approach, right? You're going to hear, when I was at Fox, this is true. In 1 year, we took 1,000 pitches. I personally took 1,000 pitches. And we ended up making 60 deals. We put 20 of them to pilot. 2 of them went to air. And that business is a 92% failure business. So that means out of every 10 I launch, most of them are going to fail, almost all of them. That's the business. So today, I look at it from a very different approach, which is very selective on who's our audience, what do we want to create? And again, our president, our chairman, Robert Rodriguez, is a creative, right? So we have those conversations of what is it we want to do, and then we look to the market, great. Who's the right person to execute this? So it's a very focused creative content approach.
That's good. More questions? Go right ahead.
Hey, Daniel, Jordan Kiswani. in regards to like the content, are you more motivated to find content that's based on IP driven, or if it's original stories? What's your take?
I would say more IP. I think today, as a creative, and again, great time to be a creative because there are so many places to sell to, so many opportunities like never before. But a lot of companies, I think most are looking for the name, right, or the IP. And the name is the director, the talent, the star, whatever it's based around. And then if you can get a piece of IP, great. But it's got to come in with a foundation. It's got to come in with something already existing and an audience for people to take risk more and more today.
But remember, like, Daniel, you remember the studio model. I mean, it still exists to a certain degree. I remember the year I left Disney, we did 15 movies a year. Netflix is doing what this year? 150 movies? Yeah. My point is the model has just tremendously expanded. And not just expanded in a way that allows for you the opportunity to own your own content, but the opportunity for you to sell across the board. It used to be, you know what, I pitched everywhere and one person said yes. Now we're getting a lot where, okay, Warner Brothers said yes, maybe, but Netflix said definitely yes. And the other thing we're seeing is a whole lot of content where the big number is with a smaller player with a longer term commitment. So you're just seeing a whole bunch of entrepreneurialism in this marketplace, and I think it's going to continue to grow. Yeah. All right, more questions. Oh, you had one right here.
What OTT platforms are you guys using? I know they have Brightcove out there and TV-OTT for like the upstarts and things like that. Do you guys have any specific suggestions as far as the best OTT experiences you have?
Own zones.
How do you spell that? How do you spell that?
I will give you my card after.
Yeah, what made you ask that question?
I'm launching my own streaming platform and I'm considering which ones to go to. We want to be able to launch it to where we have the AVOD and the SVOD compatibilities. Vimeo OTT, they're not there yet. They are going in that direction, but they're not quite there yet. But Brightcove, they do have that option starting about like $8,500 a month to use that, but it all depends on the terabytes and all the content you're uploading. But they seem like the only players in the game. And Amazon, I know Amazon, I was reading that Amazon does something with Netflix's platform. So I was curious to learn more about that as well. So I wanted to see if you guys had any specific OTTs you use for your platforms.
Yeah, we're not OTT. We're not over the top yet. I will tell you, though, if any of those places, if you have a particular feature or functionality you want and they say it's on their roadmap and it will be done by September, they're lying. Never. It's not true.
So Disney bought Fox.
ViewLift is pretty good. ViewLift. That's what we're using.
ViewLift. So Disney buys Fox and says they're now going to have their own OTT platform. AT&T buys Warner Brothers. And now it's Warner Media, and they just announced, last week? They're going to have their own OTT play. Where do we see the market going short and long term here? Like in the next 2 years, where do you put your bets?
I mean, I think that there's room for both kind of major networks for OTT at this point, right? Like, I look back at the history of television and, in the initial inception, 1, 2, 4, 5 channels, right, for a very long time. Technology like multiplexing eventually allowed for much more channels to be delivered over that single cable, opened up the opportunity for more niche programming, things that weren't just made for the masses. Same thing kind of in the theater world where you had a cinema and then multiplexes, and then you got to kind of these different eras of television that basically allowed for more content to be produced. We're in the internet age right now, right? So anyone that has an internet connection is now an addressable consumer. That's part of the reason why you said earlier that there's more and more people being able to make content successfully. I mean, that's because we need a lot more content to suffice the market at this point. There's billions of internet users now, right? So that also means, I think, that there's a lot more opportunities to have this fragmentation for a while, where you can have niche OTT apps, where you can have major OTT apps, but eventually it's bad for the consumer, right? Like if I have to download 80 apps it's not a good thing, and there will have to be consolidation. But I think it just comes back to the content that you're offering. Like if you have a good enough offering, then people will download your app and they will use it and they will happily keep it, right? But you have to have enough of a value proposition, and right now it's pretty low. But eventually, that consolidation will happen again.
Are you guys doing anything differently now that we're gone to this IP app-based marketplace and the OTT marketplace? What I mean by that is now you have more analytics and knowledge of who's viewing your content than ever. Even on the linear platforms, you get so much more data. Are you doing anything different with that to monetize better or to squeeze out more profit or whatever that might be, or to have better content? Colin, you're looking at me.
We are, yeah, I mean, because I'm not like business guy, like I'm more like, producer guy. And so I look at it like can you use the technology to make cooler stuff, right? So to me, I feel like content that the viewer can participate in. Like we did a big live game, I don't know, a year or so ago for Twitch, and it was the first live action first-person shooter video game that allowed somebody to sit at home with an avatar and to verbally control a player. So to me, that led us to we're out in the marketplace with interactive conflict resolution shows, and so we've got a couple people on the hook to buy, but we just keep
interactive conflict resolution show.
Yeah,
you just threw that
out. Divorce court live, resolve this shit live because it's super interesting and you can solve it, and it's sort of because to me, I don't know about business, I just know about what's cool and interesting. So it's how do you use this and increase a value proposition for somebody at home to have more fun, and that's how we look at it. Hood analytics.
Well, you're going, Daniel. You're going deep. You're going deep because you're doing a genre. You're going deep. I'm almost thinking you're like a digital Beachbody, but that's insulting you, maybe.
That's insulting me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What?
So then,
but
go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think
fit and tan. How that's not insulting.
I said your abs. Come on.
Yeah. Right. I think a couple things. I think one, consolidation, I think is a huge point here, and it's not consolidation pinching out, medium level creation or lower level creators or young kids coming out of Chapman with a camera and a dream. Like I think that's so much more alive and well now because of consolidation. Because you have these big monsters available to you, accessible to you, to get content out to the masses in a broad way. When you're talking about analytics and research, over at the NFL, we had every analytic and research available, every tool. And we do a piece, we do a docu storytelling piece that really pulled at the heartstrings. And I always come back to the core of creation. If it makes people think, feel, hop up and down, tap your leg, makes your heart beat, you're going to win. I mean, that I really strongly feel that it all starts with that creative gold. And once you have that, then I think you need to surround yourself with some smart people like these guys up here and figuring out, now where do we go with that? We're working the opposite way of the funnel, where we know who we're going after, and we have to use analytics and research to tweak things here and there, right? To tweak things during the production process, tweak things during the distribution process, really tweak things at the marketing level, which is something that we really haven't talked about, but I think that's a big piece of the puzzle as well. So I think there's a lot of those things you can use from a creative standpoint and a business standpoint to develop a really successful path.
Well, speaking of that, are we marketing differently?
Oh, without a doubt.
How are you guys marketing differently?
Without a doubt. I mean, casting is my favorite example of how this world has changed. Back in the day, you'd find a guy, I'll actually tell the story. I found a guy in my neighborhood, and he's a rattlesnake wrangler. And this is like 5 years ago, probably 6 years ago, before Nat Geo and all the rattlesnake shows and everything. And I saw him, and I was just interested in his business, started talking to him, and I said, this would make a great show. And he turns to me, he's in a pickup truck with rattlesnakes in cages in the back, at a Starbucks, and he says, here's my agent's phone number.
That's funny.
So my point in that is beware of Instagram numbers, beware of this reach, because something else is coming along tomorrow.
Right.
Now, don't ignore that. Beware of it, and make sure that you find the right spokespeople and the right marketing you know, brand ambassadors, as we used to call them way back in the day when it was grassroots and people would hand you stuff on the street corner. Find the right people to market your brand. You know, casting, that's what I mean by casting, is like finding these outreach places that are mainly Instagrammers. You know, this is the thing, when I cast something, that's all we hear about. Well, what are their IG numbers? Just be leery of that. Make sure they're authentic. You know, at the end of the day, make sure your creative's authentic and your marketing's authentic, and I think you'll be fine.
Also, you got to really dig into the demo, because when you look at a lot of the influencers, they may
Right.
appeal to a 12 to 24-year-old. If you're a basic cable network who primarily appeals to 35 plus, that doesn't make sense. So, and I see it happen a lot. People make deals with influencers and think they're going to get that crossover into another platform. Not really. I haven't seen it, right? Especially if there's a huge demographic gap.
Yeah.
Make
People
sure
miss
they've
that.
got a professional account and they show you the demo slide on it. Yeah, because it's always pervy dudes in prison. They're not going to watch your show.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yeah, Jim Berger, this is sort of orthogonal, but Intel and Ovid just came out with a study, and of course Intel wants to sell chips, that says that 5G to the media industry is going to mean $185 billion in the next year. Is this something you pay any attention to as a distribution channel, or is it something when it happens you'll worry about it?
Well, I'm the guy that fought shooting in 4K for years. So 5G, I mean, I think, look, it's like anything. If you're in the business of being first to market and you're chasing that, then go for it. If you're me, you know, I think you wait for those things to sort of, you know, build out. You know, it's like your Vimeo model. You know, wait for the right product to come through that's going to actually help you. You know, from an access point. I mean, that's the way I'd look at it. I don't know about you guys, but.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have the audience, they'll follow you anywhere, you know, I think.
Well, I think experiential. I think that we always look at, you know, somebody said up here earlier, 360 degree. Was that you, Colin? Somebody said 360. Yeah, you did. You know, entertainment's all been about 360. I think it expands 360 because, you know, most people don't understand 5G, but when you can be, you know, your doctor in Maryland and your patient with another doctor in LA and do surgery in real time, and it be pretty, you know, not a media use case, it'd be pretty accurate. And, you know, it opens up a whole nother avenue for how your use case and you solve different problems. And I think in entertainment, we're solving a lot of these, you know, long form, short form, building analytics in. They're going to be, VR is going to explode based upon these things. Augmented reality, which some would say is even more important than VR long term. Like, you know, I'm in this room with glasses on and I'm seeing a completely different experience. Or it's just my regular glasses or my contact lenses. So my point is, I know this is way above where you're going, but since I know you're an attorney and do a lot of regulatory work, the fact is I think it opens a tremendous amount of opportunity, but right now people aren't buying or aren't building towards it. You know, on the sort of the creative community. All right, we have time for one more question, and if it's not good, you're going to get nailed. All right, you look like a smart dude. Give us a good one.
You guys talked about the importance of global rights and diverse rights, AVOD, SVOD, but are companies today taking full advantage of their global rights? Because what we've seen is that lots of companies put an OTT service out there available to every country in the world. Their views in the US are high, maybe in the UK are high, and then everywhere else they have five app downloads a month, things like that. So what can companies do to kind of put better focus, reach their global audience better?
Well, as a producer, I don't really know the answer to that, but I will say that I've noticed when in recent like Netflix meetings, they're way more willing to do these co-pro deals. So you can give them North America, and if you think, I don't know, some of the shows that I own, I'll have like Banijay or one of those big distribution companies sell them. You can do a deal with one of these companies, and so you can kind of, but I only know as a content maker, but you can hire somebody else to sell your project outside of Netflix's purview.
See, I think it's a matter of what kind of content you're talking
Yeah.
about. When you're talking about an army like Disney, an army of content, they know how to optimize content. They have an army of people around the world, so they'll do their, their international content deals, and they have, and they have the best teams out there, and they're deep pocketed. BBC sells content in 210 markets around the world, so they have a deep bench, they're real knowledgeable. I think what you're talking about is as we move into digital content and different economic streams of content, not your A tentpole movie or your B, but maybe your C, D, or very niche content that these guys in many cases are creating. That's where you do get opportunity. When I was launching the James Brown channel, and that was a real niche play. We were taking all of his content out of the vault and taking his live stuff, cutting it up, and putting a digital channel around it with his estate. I was amazed at how much European business we got. But I couldn't monetize it because I had a little tiny staff. I'm doing okay in the United States, but wow, France, I'm going nuts. But I have no way, I can't hire people. My point is, for the army of different types of content creatives and the people that seek to monetize content, both on the music and video side, there will be opportunity, but I don't think it's at the level that it's going to open up a whole nother level of opportunity. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's just an economic decision, right? Like the important thing is to be aware of it, that it is now an opportunity, that it is something that you have to consider. But if you don't have an ability to monetize it and you don't have marketing dollars to get someone in Africa to download your app, then find another avenue to monetize it. Just consider it, right? Just be aware of it. Just make the conscious decision to keep those rights or not keep those rights, but don't ignore it.
Was that a good enough last question?
Yeah.
All right. And then I will say thank you to all these great panelists.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.